Hey, everybody, how you doing? A little bumpy start to the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast, but not to worry. Party at the Moon Tower. If those of you who've seen Dazed and Confused, Two Full Kegs, everyone's going to be there. The great Rahul Iyer at Chicago Divorce on social, and Rayford Dalton Palmer, the divorce lawyer, so old he has 3 names, possibly young looking. But in any event, this isn't about me. This is about the audience. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. We have a great show today. We're going to talk about, give you a little tease and please, as they say in the radio biz. We've got a great story hot off the press about a TikTok influencer who got whacked for a gigantic judgment for alienation of affections, which is Mr. Steal Your Girl or Steal Your Husband litigation. So this is juicy because it's a giant verdict, and we'll get to that. And also, it's unusual because you just don't see this much anymore. And it's a really old school type of case. It's no longer allowed in many states. Okay. Next, Rahul's going to talk about an article discussing, is divorce contagious? And discuss what that's all about. And then a really funny story came on. Is there a situation where you think you're not married, but you're actually legally married? What is that about? And we have a celebrity of sorts who was surprised to find out she was married. And we're going to talk about that. We got audience questions as usual. Going to answer those. Some about custody, some about emergency orders of protection, and one about just getting a lawyer to move forward on a case. So, how do you deal with a lawyer who's dragging their feet, not answering questions, that kind of thing. And then dating app stuff. We've found information on divorce dating apps we did not know existed. Just when we think we've covered the waterfront on dating apps, there's more. So there's divorce dating apps we were not aware of. Then we've got Facebook dating, and Rahul and I were surprised to find out apparently that's available. Allegedly not just in use by the oldsters or the boomers, as the kids say. Boomers, by definition, folks, the baby boom ends at 1964. I am not a baby boomer. I'm a Gen Xer. But some kids would argue it's a state of mind. It is not an age. I disagree with you, but okay. And then we're going to talk about Tinder evolving to use AI for you Tinder fans out there. And that's it for the show. So we're going to roll, and not that's it. That's what we're talking about today. So here we go. Let's kick it off with this first story. We've got a TikTok influencer ordered to pay $1.75 million for seduction. So what's the story here? Brittany Kennard was sued. This story came out just on November 12th, just yesterday. NBC News. This is hot material here for the live stream. North Carolina jury ordered a TikTok influencer to pay $1.75 million to her manager's ex-wife after the woman accused her of sparking the end of their marriage. This person has almost 3 million followers on TikTok, sued by her manager's ex-wife under North Carolina's alienation of affection law. This does not have to do with the green men from Mars land, not alienation. So that basically means stealing affections. In the complaint, Montague accused Kennard of getting close to her and using information from their friendship to steal her husband. I'm paraphrasing. Alienation laws, it's really a very old case type, and it allows somebody to get a remedy from a court in some states for somebody intervening in your marriage and stealing your spouse. The theory being that spouse is supposed to provide you, we would say in the legal business, when I used to do personal injury, when we did claims for what we call loss of consortium, which means the benefits of my marriage are damaged because of this physical injury or emotional injury. Those claims are hard to prove, but in those claims, we used to talk about sex, services, and society. That means obviously sexual relationship services, like, person is working, keeping the house up, or they're helping pay bills, but they're taking care of the home, cleaning up whatever they do, mowing the lawn, these things. And society is friendship, companionship, and that stuff. So some states assign price tags to that. And alienation says, hey, my relationship broke up. I got divorced, but you caused it. So not the two people that are divorced, but a third party intervened, causing the divorce. Now, the really interesting thing is it doesn't address the contributory fault of the person who cheated, who was in the marriage, which is kind of interesting. So the person was accused of engaging in behavior designed to seduce the married man. And here's the behavior intended to seduce, including wearing short skirts and bending over in front of him in the attire, verbally flirting with him, and, get this, flicking her tongue to expose her tongue rings in a flirtatious manner.
So this is what that lady did?
Allegedly. Well, apparently the jury believed it. Akira Montague said she confided in Kennard about personal matters, thinking they were friends. such as her husband's infidelity during one of her pregnancies, the complaint said. She accused Kennard of using the personal information to seduce. She learned of the affair in January 2024 because a video of the two of them in the couple's home. These people exchanged numerous videos and text messages. That's how she busted them, and frequently met in the home. Now, and the person was accused of planning and taking trips with a married man, making videos expressing her love for him, all this stuff. So the lawsuit alleged that she interfered with the marriage and caused the marriage's demise. The term in that state is criminal conversation. And it's not talking, it's a conversation. Any of you remember Old English literature? Sex scenes where basically two people go into the woods and it's foggy, and then they come out walking different directions. That's as X-rated as it got in the 1800s, 1700s British literature. So that's criminal conversation and an alienation of affection. The jury found Kennard liable for $250,000 for criminal conversation and $1.5 million in damages for alienation of affections. This is really it's a giant verdict. And Rahul, you rarely hear about these. In Illinois, this has been banned for years, right?
Yeah, I think this was repealed when the no-fault laws were passed. And I think that was like 2016 or 2014. Yeah, something like that. So in that window. So about 10 years ago, roughly.
But nobody brought those cases. They were like unheard of. But interesting, in some states, this points up something we've talked about before, where state laws vary widely. And something that is a non-issue in one state legally is a big deal in another one. We've talked about if there's an affair, you might lose maintenance in South Carolina if there's proof to the court. Here in North Carolina, apparently alienation of affections is alive and well. If you're cheating, you might get whacked for a giant verdict. Now, will she come up with the money and have the funds for it? Who knows? But this is really, really interesting from a legal nerd standpoint. So we wanted to geek out with you guys and tell you about this. So yeah, this is occasionally when we have a consultation, somebody will say, can I go after the person who caused my spouse to cheat? I mean, once in a while, people ask, and we have to tell them, no, there's nothing you can do. Alienation of affections was repealed several years ago. And even back in the day when it wasn't repealed, I would advise people against it because their chances of proving it were just slim and none. And no lawyer is going to take this like on a contingent fee basis. Like a personal injury case, lawyers will get paid 1/3 if they recover. These are so chancy, you're not going to find a lawyer who will do it for a percentage. They're going to want you to pay by the hour. And these things are going to be long shots. And the proofs aren't pretty because the affirmative defenses, which is the other side responding, gets ugly because they say things like, well, the marriage was already dead. They didn't have sex for 3 years. It's about the most personal testimony and uncomfortable testimony you're going to have in public ever. Is all about your sex and romantic life with your spouse and then what's going on with this third party. So it's really ugly stuff. As Forrest Gump says, that's all I have to say about that. So next, tell us about this divorce contagious thing. This is interesting.
An article out of Deseret.com where Dan Cox of American Enterprise Institute looked at data from a survey on American life, and he found that divorced Americans are much more likely to have close friends who are divorced, and that people in social networks with more divorce also seem to have lower marital satisfaction themselves. And among Americans who are divorced, 41% have some friends who are divorced. Among those who are married, only 21% have some friends who are divorced. So he concludes, it appears divorce may be contagious. And he says, when divorce becomes common in a friend group, it can influence how people view commitment, conflict, and the purpose of marriage itself. And then the article goes on to talk about, at every stage of life, the people look at friends and wonder if they're on the right track. Like you and I were talking about before the pod. Is it time to get married? All my friends are getting married. Maybe I should get married.
Yep.
Should we start having kids? My friends are having kids. Should we have kids? How many? Is it time to buy a house? We all used to live in a condo building together, but everyone is starting to move. Maybe we should do that too.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. It's not exactly peer pressure. It's just you're just going to think about it because it's happening around you. So you're influenced just by what you're seeing around you. And if your friends are getting divorced and you're married, it's going to make you put a spotlight on your own relationship. My ex-wife actually used to talk about prom theory. She was a high school teacher and then a school administrator and a high school principal. And she said, more people break up right after prom. It's death to relationship. She came up with this herself. Prom theory was that typically by prom, you've been dating for most people, if you're dating, you've been dating for a while. But the significant thing was, for a lot of people, it might be the first time in high school that your relationship is on public display. And people are watching you and this boyfriend or girlfriend, and you are thinking about the relationship externally.
Well, it sort of becomes like the crescendo where everything is almost symbolically leading up to that, where they then might feel there's no place else to go but down.
Okay, that's a good point because it's sort of the peak event of the season.
They're done. Everyone, knows college and this whole thing's going to disperse. So
that's probably part of it too. We had a junior prom too, so you weren't done, but you were kind of done for the year. But it's a demarcation line to the biggest thing of the end of the year. The other thing too, I think, is we hype up prom so much that I think kids think it's going to be this spectacular thing. Parents are excited for it. We spend money on clothes and all this stuff, and it can never live up to the hype. And kids kind of say, is this all there is? Especially with social media now, hyping everything to the max. Anything in comparison, IRL is like a letdown.
That makes sense. And it's almost like their friends in this, back to this like divorce thing. It's almost like, how in social media, like you said, you have influencers. So these friends are almost pseudo influencers who are influencing their decision. I mean, you might not necessarily buy everything an influencer posts on Instagram, but you might think about it twice.
That's true. And one of the things I talk about in my book, I Just Want This Done, which I'll talk about in a minute, but is you don't want to have, I don't say Greek chorus there, but you have to be careful about getting advice from family and friends because they're going to be just cheerleaders. They're not going to give you objective guidance largely because, of course, they're on your side. What I'm getting at is in the context of the story you're talking about here, there's a drink with me thing. If I'm getting divorced and I'm feeling bad about my marriage, I'm not really happy to look at your happy marriage. My girlfriend or whatever is sitting with me. I'm talking at the bar and I'm getting divorced. Well, I'm not happy to hear how great her husband is and how wonderful her marriage is. There's that negative influence too of, when I say drink with me, it's like drinkers want other people to drink with them. If I'm having a drink of alcohol, I don't want to drink alone. So I'm like, have a drink. Well, maybe your husband's no good too. So, or your wife or whatever, women are all bad, no, they're not. And you're not happy about your wife, but there is a thing like that. When we feel bad about ourselves, we seek or we look around for people to commiserate with. And if they're not like agreeing with us, people don't like that. So there's something to be said for that. The story is really interesting.
Yeah. But I really wanted to point out the fact that, people, again, as a lot of things, might have this in the back of their head that, what is this correlation? Causation, or is it not, right? Are divorced, or is it the inverse that you survey people and divorced people just tend to hang out with other divorced people more, which is what bumps up the percentage.
Right.
And vice versa, non-divorced married people hang out with married couples more.
Yes.
So is it almost like they all became divorced together, or because they were divorced, they're hanging out together?
Yeah, right. Chicken and egg situation.
Yeah, exactly.
This next article is great. I came across this doing show prep. This story came out November 6, 2025, published on the Daily Beast. And this is a doozy. Brittany Porter, whose stage name is Brooke Lynn. I don't know her, but I'm not cool enough. This is wild. Apparently, she thought she was getting engaged to Malaysia's former king, but it was in fact a marriage. She now wants a proper divorce. Brittany Porter, 30, claims she learned months after participating in April 2024 ceremony with Sultan Mohammed V in Oman. Rahul knew the capital of Oman, which I did not.
That's right.
Muscat, that it was actually a legally binding Islamic nikah marriage contract. And she was shocked to find out that this was the case. Mohammed V, 56, has been Sultan of Malaysia's Kelantan region since 2010, when his father became incapacitated after a stroke. He was king of Malaysia from 2016 to 2019, became the first monarch to abdicate from the throne. There's a little history for you from Malaysia. Porter records her music under the name Brooke Lynn, is Mohammed V's fourth wife, unbeknownst to her, and one of his two current spouses. I'm trying to find out the background of this, like how did this happen? The Sultan was previously married to, I won't even try to pronounce this woman's name, from 2004 to 2008, and a Russian beauty queen, all right, good call, to Oksana Andreevna Vovodina, known as Rihanna Petra during their marriage. For those of you playing the home game and keeping track, she was 33. From 2018 to 2019, he had a son with the Russian lady. He was married to another person since 2010, Sultana Nurdiana Petra Abdullah. I can pronounce that. The couple appeared together recently in September. Mutual friends in New York in January 2024. Oh, and you're quoting. Yeah. Say this part.
She was attracted to his good banter and cute British accent.
Good banter.
I'm the Sultan of Malaysia was the banter.
Good job, Sultan of Malaysia. It's sweet when you can say you're royalty. That helps with the ladies, folks. And he wasn't faking it. He didn't buy the 1 square foot of land in Scotland. You know how you can you can buy part of a baronetcy for, $100 on the internet and say, oh, I'm a baron, here's my 1 square foot of dirt in Scotland. So he had a cute British accent. Great. She said her relationship with Muhammad V moved quickly, shocker, and soon featured lavish gifts, and frequent trips across Asia. So he was a fun guy and charitable, a giver, if you will. Here's a quote. He flew with my friends all around the world. He was so generous, the nicest hotels, giving my friends the best treatment, experiences, and gifts. He loves hotels. He probably spent millions on them for our trips. I can't imagine why that would be. Link in the show notes, by the way, folks, for the story. However, the April 2024 ceremony was the couple's first overseas trip. The singer told the Daily Mail that Mohammed V proposed shortly before they left for Oman. Now, safety tip, when a sultan proposes, you listen to them. Take it seriously. You don't know what you're getting into. She believed the ceremony was merely a celebration of their engagement. In my culture, the big ceremony is a wedding, which we planned for January 2025. So I was confused, she told South China Morning Post. In Oman, they brought an imam out and I did the whole conversion. Okay.
Oh, so she became a Muslim. Got it.
It says, but he didn't teach me all that much about Islam. Another important tip, if you're going to switch religions, learn a little bit about the religion, folks. It's just the proper respect to the religion. Also, you want to know what's involved. And then she says, I only recently learned that a nikah, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, constitutes a marriage under Islamic law. The rituals are different. The legal requirements are very different and intertwined with the religion, depending on the religion. And you need to be aware of these things, folks. And just because it's in another country doesn't mean it doesn't count. This isn't just a lark, like we went out and did it for funsies. And then, by the way, another tip, while living in Malaysia, this Miss Porter was referred to as, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right, Che Puan, a formal title for the non-royal spouses of royal family members. So they were calling him this guy's wife, basically. And she said they had relationship issues early on. They were argued a lot about her extravagant spending. Okay. And the fighting got worse after she had a miscarriage. Okay. Now my BS alarm is going up here. So then the Sultan cut off all contact, prompting her to demand a proper divorce, whatever that means. So in any event, she's getting a divorce in the U.S. after she woke up to the fact that she was actually married. But I don't know how many other indications of being married you need other than you're having this guy's baby, you converted to Islam, you went to an Islamic marriage ceremony, and you didn't do the basic homework. So anyway.
But what I thought was kind of interesting, without being judgmental, is, this article here has, I guess, a couple of posts from Instagram that's been embedded. One of these things is like a series of photos that she posted. One of them contains the engagement ring, and frankly, it's really underwhelming. I'm like, this is something like some college kid's going to get for his girlfriend before he has a real job, and he's proposing. It's like, after looking at Cristiano Ronaldo's and Bezos, I mean, this guy's the Sultan, You would think it would be maybe a little bit better, bigger, but again, maybe it's just the angle. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm unimpressed looking at this.
Just a little square, and
yeah, not that
it doesn't pop, as they say, or maybe it's just a bad angle, and maybe it's huge in the bottom, and I just can't see it. So
because you got me curious, I looked at the next page, and this is lovely. Exhibit A. This is some wedding venue. Name of event: wedding of Brittany, Petra, and Sultan Mohammed. Location TBD. Date of event TBD 2024. It has their names. Effective date. It's a contract for like a venue. It's called Wedding of Brittany Sultan Mohammed, and it's signed by the two of them. I don't know what's going on here, but she posted like all the stuff. She posted the receipts, and it doesn't really help her case. She says like, we had a religious marriage, but she doesn't think it was legal. Anyway, so advice to you guys out there, all the kidding aside, when you have a religious ceremony, if you get married in another country, it's legally binding. And it'll be regarded legally as a marriage here under a principle of what we call comity, C-O-M-I-T-Y, not to be confused with comedy like stand-up. Comedy means like in the concept of sort of friendship, like because we're friendly with other countries, we're going to recognize their legal judgments or their legal decrees, in this case, a marriage, in our country. So if possible, our country gives deference to legal things from other countries when possible. In this case, our country will say, yeah, this is a legal marriage. So you can't take this stuff lightly. Like getting married in Vegas is getting legally married. Some people will do a religious ceremony, but they don't have the certificate and they don't have the marriage license. I think, Rahul, you were talking about a case like that recently. Was there one where there's invalidity of marriage because they didn't complete the loop on getting their certificate filed?
Yeah, something to that effect, where you really need to get a certificate. So you get a license, which is like a license to drive.
Right.
Right? So you have to get your license, at least in Illinois, to then say, hey, this is a license that says I can legally get married. Okay, so you get your license through the state, and then you get the marriage done.
Whether it's a judge or officiant of some kind.
Exactly. They will then have to sign, along with some witnesses, this certificate
Right.
of marriage that they'll then have to mail in or drop off, essentially the state, to record the marriage. If you don't close that loop, if you drop the ball on not sending it in, the question is, well, are you actually married?
This is rare, but once in a blue moon, we'll see this. The marriage can still be legal, but they have to finish this detail.
Yeah, close the loop or fix the defect, as they say, once you are on notice of the defect.
Word to the wise, going off to another country to get married doesn't mean, oh, it doesn't count. Be aware. Okay, audience questions. These are real questions from the Illinois Divorce Support Network, our private Facebook group. Link in the show notes and easy to Google. Illinois Divorce Support Network. Free to join, anonymous to post questions, Illinois focused. And folks in the group help each other out, and then we also help answer questions. And we choose some of them to put on the show, ones we think are more relevant or useful for a broader audience. So here's one. I emailed my lawyer last week with questions that should have been addressed 6 months ago. There's a lot of money on the line. The divorce has been going on 4.5 years. Should I wait and ask if he filed the paperwork and did what he was supposed to do? Should I fire him on the spot or the day of court? I guess the gist is what to do about a lawyer who won't respond. We don't know all the details here, but in general, we have a lawyer that's not responsive.
Yeah, so you have a lawyer who's allegedly not responsive, or you're not feeling like you're being heard, or you're not getting what you believe, the documentation you're requesting, etc. Typically, what I like to say is your lawyer works for you, so your questions should be answered, either via phone or in writing. Anything that's filed is being filed on your behalf, so you should really receive a copy of everything that's been filed. So asking your lawyer if something was filed 6 months ago, it sort of puzzles me, because if something was filed 6 months ago, you should have a filed copy of that 6 months ago or upon it's being filed. If it's not filed, and if it was something you spoke about, you'll have to have a reason why it wasn't filed. Different lawyers have like different strategies that they want to employ or deploy. And just because one attorney thinks something should be filed, a different attorney might think it doesn't have to be filed, or maybe the timing is off. So this is definitely something, however, you need to be aligned with and on the same page with your attorney, and communication needs to be there. If you haven't had any contact with your attorney in 6 months or several months, that's a problem, I would think. Even if your lawyer did everything you wanted them to do or they thought was supposed to happen, you should still be comfortable with who's representing you. And so if you're not comfortable with the person representing you, or you feel like this could happen again, you should try and see if you want to switch attorneys. You can let them know that you're going to go in a different direction, seek that attorney's withdrawal, or you can find a new attorney and then have that attorney substitute in for your current attorney. I don't recommend firing someone in court on the spot, as you said, just because it doesn't necessarily have the dramatic sort of flavor that you might think as it does in movies. And it really won't let the guy out, or the attorney out at the time, because they have to file paperwork with the court. It's really hard for a judge to, without anything being filed regarding a withdrawal, simply say, hey, I want to fire my attorney today. And the judge says, okay, sure. That doesn't really happen in that course. Something really typically needs to be filed. I mean, maybe the judge will entertain it, but you definitely should do it before, so that on the court date, the attorney can actually leave as you want them to, without having a future court date to address this.
Exactly. And get your new lawyer ahead of time so you're not wasting time. But in my book, I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced Without Losing Their Kids' Money and Minds, available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and where all great ebooks are sold, I have a chapter called How to Choose the Best Divorce Lawyer. And part of the chapter is when it's time to fire your divorce lawyer. So this is very apropos. Number 1, when your calls aren't being returned. Number 2, the lawyer blows court deadlines. Number 3, your lawyer doesn't know the basic facts of your case. Number 4, the lawyer doesn't deliver on promises. Number 5, you're getting bad advice. 6, you argue about goals, meaning the lawyer doesn't agree with your goals. So also I would add to that, if you're not getting bills, that's a bad sign. So lawyers are supposed to keep their clients reasonably informed about the progress of their case, and that includes timely billing. I had a client call us one time who said, I'm frustrated with my lawyer. They're not talking to me, and they haven't sent me a bill in 9 months, but allegedly they were working for them. I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense at all. And to me, that means just poor record keeping. And what else is not getting done? If they can't even bill the client to get paid, something's really wrong. So the client got wise and finally fired that attorney. But you're absolutely right, Rahul. It's this person's really waited way too long to address the situation, but better that they're waking up to it now.
Better late than never. So Rafe, okay. So do you have any suggestions for when an emergency order of protection ends and the abuser is allowed to be at medical appointments and educational meetings, presumably for the child? And this is especially, in light of a situation where maybe people think the abuse did actually happen despite an order of protection existing.
First, I'll define a couple things. So in Illinois, we have what's called an order of protection. In other states, it's called a restraining order or an emergency restraining order. This allows somebody to go in with no notice to the other party, get a court order requiring that they be usually like kicked out of a house, stay away from them and the child or children, and not communicate with them, etc. And it also can include removing their firearms. So there's some things like that. And you can go in with no notice, tell your situation to the court, to go in the morning or the afternoon, and within a short time, get this order entered. The sheriff will serve it on the party who's the subject of the order, and then they can get arrested and charged with a crime for violating the order of protection. So I kind of call it a nuclear bomb. Because it's a total no contact order. It cuts off all contact and the person gets thrown out of the house. So it's fairly extreme. With that said, it can be important in a domestic violence situation. Now, the important thing to know in Illinois is one of the caveats is it's a 21-day order, meaning it only lasts for 21 days. The trade-off is you get it very easily, typically, if your story holds any water at all, because the other person isn't there to testify about what their side of the story is. So the balance is, in the interest of protecting somebody on an emergency basis, we allow this to happen without notice. The theory being if we notified an abuser, they'd probably beat up the person or something real bad might happen. And we need to be able to do this on an emergency basis. The trade-off being that order expires. And what happens is the court sets a hearing date usually on the day of the expiration to see if the order should be extended, modified in some way, or it should just terminate. And then the order contains notice of that hearing. So the recipient sees, oh, there's a hearing on this at X date, 3 weeks away. I can go in and defend myself. I'll get a lawyer and whatever, and I'll go in and speak for myself. That's called a plenary hearing. In our state, if you are successful, if you're the alleged victim and you're successful in convincing the court there's a danger, the court could enter an order that's up to 2 years in length and might modify it in some way or whatever. And states vary in how they do this, but it's similar. What this person's apparently saying is what happens when the order expires in the 21 days, let's say, and the abuser, we're going to say alleged abuser, is allowed to be at medical appointments, education meetings, because there will be no more order of protection after it expires. So now what happens? Because the other person can be around, the children and stuff. Then it says the last bit is when people think the abuse did not happen. Well, we can't assess the facts, right? We don't know what's going on. We don't have both sides of the story. But the bottom line is, I don't know that this person understands that they now have to put on evidence at the plenary hearing to convince the court to extend it. If the order gets extended, they're still not going to be at these meetings and stuff like that. But if the court isn't convinced that there's enough proof to extend the order, it might be reduced, modified, or eliminated. It won't be extended. It'll just end on its own terms, and the person can show up. So the remedy here, the only remedy, assuming you don't get a plenary order extending this, your only remedy is to go into divorce court or parentage court and get the judge there to enter an order related to custody, a temporary custody order, blocking them from appearing and what have you. But you're going to have evidence. And the standard of proof is going to be, you got to prove that it's in the best interest of the child to restrict the other parent's visitation. And you have to show that there's serious endangerment in Illinois, mental or physical harm. So there's a pretty high burden to get over to restrict somebody's ability to be around the children. So when you start these orders of protection, you kind of better be sure where you're going with it, because you drop this bomb, they're going to be angry because the order kicks them out of the house and everything. And if they have firearms, those are going to be gone, their FOID card and all that. And then they're coming back to the house in 21 days. Are you ready for that? You probably didn't have enough proof to get a plenary hearing if that's the case, or to succeed on a plenary. So you need to be ready. And you got to get competent legal advice to help you with this situation. So unfortunately, people sometimes get advice from friends or on the internet that says, go get an order of protection. It's easy. You don't need a lawyer. And they go in and do that. And it's like lobbing a hand grenade into the place where the other person is. And they're going to be angry. And now you've really stirred a hornet's nest. If you're a victim of violence, you have no choice. But you need to understand the next steps. And it's going to take work to extend the order of protection or get a custody order, and you have to move quickly. That's the answer to that question. Rahul, do you have anything on that?
No, I think that was very comprehensive. Yeah, I think you covered everything there. Yep.
And then we try to answer these thoroughly because they're educational type things and not just answer the one immediate little question. So here's one for Rahul. If a child has special needs, learning disorders, and trauma, does the judge need to provide, or let's call it family court, need to provide accommodations for the child's disabilities, learning disorders, trauma in any court-ordered services? Number one. Number two, does family court need to put academics, hospital-based medical therapies related to their recognized disability, I mean the children's disability, before reunification therapy? Three, does the court need to ensure child's educational needs before forced reunification? So it really sounds like kind of one main issue that person's getting at. It sounds like the court is ordering, or they're concerned the court will order reunification before all these special needs services. And there may be a misunderstanding about what the court provides or could provide. So can you address generally, we're licensed Illinois attorneys in Chicago. So we're talking about stuff that we understand in our area. Your mileage may vary, but generally states are kind of similar here. So can you address this issue of, court-ordered services for children, and then sort of the order of priorities? Like, what about this reunification thing versus various court-ordered services, therapy, blah, 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 whether it's court-ordered or not, I guess.
Right. So the overarching thing here was what you briefly mentioned previously, which is what is in the child's best interest. Typically, when you get to the stage where there might be discussion of mental health disorders, trauma, etc., you would have already likely had what is called a guardian ad litem on the case, who basically investigates the best interest of the child factors in your situation and reports to the court what they believe should happen specifically in your case. You may also have simultaneously what they call custody evaluator, who is specifically dropped in to address mental health, other sort of issues that a GAL may not be licensed to handle or has the expertise in handling. A court specifically does not provide a lot of the services that you're referring to. Rather, what they do is they direct you to acquire or enroll the child in said services. You get to pay for them. That's the prize. The court doesn't give it to you. The court has very limited services they provide. I mean, some courts, depending on the county, may provide mediation services. Some courts might exit parenting class, some sort of supervised visitation centers that they might provide for you to go do this. Some courts may provide what they call emergency intervention, where it's almost like a supercharged mediation for a child with going through some crises on the day. But the sort of accommodations for child's disabilities, learning disorders in any court-ordered service, well, there won't really be any court-ordered services unless you mean services with a therapist's office that the court orders you to enroll in and then that you go to, in which case a court won't provide those accommodations. The service provider has to provide any necessary accommodation for your child. Similarly, do they put academics, hospital-based medical therapies before reunification therapies? This is something that I would think of as it depends on sort of the frequency and the need and the level of intensity of some of these treatment options or therapies, because courts want to ensure it's sort of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Obviously, if the child is in physical therapy for 5 days a week, they're not going to say, okay, well, don't do that, do this instead, right? They're not going to do that. But if you have counseling every other week, courts will love to say, you know what? We'll simultaneously process this. You're going to do reunification therapy or family therapy, whatever the case is. You're also going to do your counseling.
You're exactly right. Can you address this, the reunification counseling? And this is kind of a sore spot in these cases. We see this more in the support group. What I mean is, it seems to create stress where one person thinks the reunification is improper or that the other person doesn't deserve it. The other parent doesn't. And they don't understand why the court is ordering reunification treatment or therapy. And they say, well, the other person's bad. They shouldn't have that. Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah. So the court, when it comes to the best interest of the child, favors in keeping or uniting parents and children. A court does not favor distancing parents from children. The court wants to do whatever it can to ensure a parent and both parents, I guess, or a parent and a child, as the case might be, has this sort of bond. The court wants to create parenting structure. The court wants children to have parents in their lives. The court hates to rip a parent away or tell a parent they cannot have any contact with the child. However, the caveat being, it's got to be a safe environment for the child. It's got to be in the child's best interest, and which is where the reunification therapy comes in. I know, like you said, Rafe, a lot of people say, well, this person did X, Y, and Z. They should never see this child again. Well, it depends on what X, Y, and Z is. But like we say, even fathers who are in prison, for example, will get to see their child in a supervised setting, depending on the context.
The way I've said it before to get people's attention is even abusers see their kids.
Abusers, there you go.
That's terrible. Like, I'm just telling you, this is where we say, we're the weatherman, we don't make the weather. The person can't be beating them up when they're seeing them, but if they're a past abuser, we generally don't penalize somebody forever. Courts want to let somebody have a path to success, to get back to a parent relationship. And it starts small, right? Well, like the initial thing is like an hour every week or 2 weeks or whatever, and to see the counselor works with them.
And exactly. And it sort of creates a safe environment for the parent and the child to communicate, build trust, etc. Typically, that therapist will meet with the child first, kind of feel it out. And if they think something inappropriate is happening, they're not going to continue to do it. They'll pull the plug on it. It's to sort of take these baby steps and work with the child's level of comfort. You also don't want a situation where a child is mirroring a parent's sort of mindset when taken out. They'll tell a parent what they want to hear. Oh, I don't want to see X, Y, and Z parent ever, because that's what they think that parent wants to hear.
The other issue we have is kids just don't want to leave the house anyway, even if they don't mind the other parent. If you're happily married and you have young kids, is it easy to take them to the grocery store? No, they don't. They don't want to move to go to their grandma's house. They'd rather look at their phone and play video games than sit there. So add to that the fact that mom or dad lives across town and it's cold out and all that, and they don't want to get disturbed. Well, and then on top of that, maybe there's a negative history. That parent might be in an abuse situation. And so you have this compounded problem. And in our experience in our world, the less a kid sees either parent, it doesn't take long for that memory to fade and that relationship to get in big trouble, because frequency of visits is shown to be critical in maintaining a parent-child relationship. Those formative years are critical, and the court's aware of that. To recap, no, the court doesn't provide services or accommodations. You're going to do that. The court will consider those accommodations if they're relevant. But reunification is a high priority for a judge. And we also don't know all the circumstances. One person's abusive behavior is perfectly acceptable to another person. And I'm not glossing over it. There is abuse. I was vice president of a women's shelter, so I get it. I'm not, I've got the bona fides. It's real. But there are things where people say, well, dad keeps them up too late and eat Fruit Loops for breakfast, not, protein. And they play video games till midnight, and that's child abuse. Well, no, the bar is quite low for what's considered acceptable parenting in the courthouse, folks. Mm-hmm. Again, I'm the weatherman. I don't make the weather. Maybe I agree with you that it isn't good for the kids to be up till midnight, but the court standard is kind of like, are they injured? Are they doing okay in school? Are they healthy? Are they happy relatively? Then that's good enough. Moving on to dating apps. Rahul and I were talking before the show, just when we think we've covered the waterfront on these dating apps, there's more. The more, in this case, they're apps for divorced people. So we found a webpage, link will be in the show notes, best divorced dating sites. So somebody actually went through this from the perspective of divorced people. So we're providing a valuable public service. And I'll make this brief because you can all look up the article, but I don't think these are listed in any particular order. But number one is eHarmony, then Just Divorced Singles. I didn't know there were these customized apps for divorcing people. I did a little research in this. These divorce apps actually go way back to like the early 2000s, as it turns out. So the profile is you've got to be divorced to be in this group. So theoretically, you're going to have people that kind of understand your situation, probably similar ballpark time in their lives. So that's the idea, is to help you focus on people that'll be a better fit for you. Another one's called Divorced and Looking. Okay, clever. Divorced People Meet. This is an older one. It was founded in 2004, it says. So then Plenty of Fish they mentioned, which I know Plenty of Fish. And I think it was originally a Christian app, and then they broadened their horizons. I think that's where the fish, there was like a double meaning of the fish thing. It has established 03, has 90 million registered members with 3.6 million daily actives. That's a lot of users. Plenty of Fish, believe it or not. So there's a lot going on there. Very interesting. So that's the scoop on these divorce-related dating apps. So Rahul's going to talk about Facebook dating. What's the scoop on this?
Yeah, so I didn't really realize Facebook had a dating sort of arm, but apparently it's there and it's bigger than ever. So I guess Facebook dating, according to this article on TechCrunch by Amanda Silberling, says that Facebook dating was launched in 2019. It has 21.5 million daily active users across 52 countries. So it's huge. And it's not a standalone app. It's actually a feature within Facebook. It's built in.
They're their demographics got to skew older. I mean, my kids don't use my kids. My young men are 24 and 28. So they thought Facebook was for old people when they were growing up, and they were on Instagram and Snapchat.
So it's funny you say that, because the author says what's most surprising, though, is how Facebook dating seems to slowly be catching on among young people. The platform counts 1.77 million users between the ages of 18 and 29 in the US, which is still not, I guess they're saying, quoting, up to par with the usual suspects, but is getting closer. Tinder had 7.3 million active users, Hinge had 4.4, Bumble had 3.6, and Grindr had 2.2. They've noted the concern or struggle to keep Gen Z and young millennials on the platform, sort of like you said.
So what it seems like, what's the deal about cost?
You don't have to pay to quote unquote unlock your most desirable matches or buy other premium features that's supposed to bring you closer to finding the one, as something like Hinge might have you do. Hinge. There you go.
Good job, Zuck. Excellent.
This is not
work.
Sponsored by Facebook or by Zuck, by the
No.
way. This is free marketing. So
we're willing to accept sponsoring, though, from Meta. We'll happily take some cash. But so maybe one of the things that's great about it is it's free, and the infrastructure is already there to message people, and the idea is it's already structured and set up. So interesting. Well, that's cool. I appreciate it. Well, that's it for the show, folks. We want to just remind you of a couple of things before you go. Remember, our show's on every week. The show drops on Fridays. We record the live stream typically Thursday mornings around 10 to 10:30 Central Time. Show's typically about an hour. We have a whole backlog of shows for the I Just Want This Done podcast going back 42 previous episodes. This is episode 43. Plenty of content to check out. We always provide entertainment and education about divorce, dating, marriage, prenups, and relationships. So please check out those shows. Please like, share, subscribe. That helps us see we're doing the right thing. We want to keep you entertained and informed. So with that said, also, our law firm is STG Divorce Law. They really sponsored this podcast. We're located in Chicago at stglawfirm.com. You can find Rahul Iyer at Chicago Divorce on Instagram, correct?
That's correct.
And I'm at Rayford Palmer on most of the platforms, on Insta, X, and TikTok. So check out our socials, and please share, subscribe this content, and listen to us on audio. We're on all the major podcast platforms. Thanks very much for listening. Have a great day.